Good morning. Thank you for waiting. I'm Dan Thomas. I'm the Communications Director and the spokesperson for the President of the General Assembly. Thank you for attending this media stakeout following today's informal dialogue of the General Assembly. Please allow me to introduce His Excellency Igor Lukšić, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of his country, Montenegro, which has nominated him as a candidate for the position of the next Secretary General of the United Nations. Sir, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Well, good day to you all. It's been really a great privilege to be the icebreaker, to open this whole series of informal dialogues with the candidates for the position of Secretary General. I have to say that I like the event. I hope it was as interactive as it was expected to be. I also like the opportunity of responding to some of the questions from the civil sector, from young people who also watch, and to see how this whole thing will evolve and where UN should go. And I'll be also very happy to respond to some of your questions, should you have any.
Evelyn. Right. Sir, can you please elaborate on what you said about migrants in Eastern Europe?
What I said about?
Migrants in Eastern Europe, considering what just happened in Macedonia.
All along, it's been very, sad set of events. My country, in fact, was not part of the route itself, but we live in a neighborhood, and we've been in close contact with our friends from countries from the region about this issue. I had one of the questions related to migrants' flow at the informal dialogue, and actually I used it as an example to show that UN has a chance to become more effective, more proactive, because it is wrong to have such craved and crafted and with a lot of commitment, a lot of work, crafted agreement how to treat that, and then the next day somebody from UN system, in this case special agency dealing with refugees, says, well, there's a lot of controversies related to the agreement. I think it shows by example that we need to be more proactive, that we need to keep working together, and that's why I've been emphasizing the need that the next administration actually the next administration's Deputy Secretary General should be in close contact with regional arrangements to make sure that this does not repeat. In principle, with the problem of migrants or the refugees crisis is obviously an aftermath of the inability of the international community to be quick in solving some of the hotspots. In this case, it's Syria, but it's also people who come from other parts of the world.
We have a question over here. If you could identify yourself.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Lukšić, George Baumgarten, correspondent for Jewish newspapers in North America, as well as for some East African and other papers. You mentioned in your vision statement, your oral vision statement, the obvious primacy of human rights, and you mentioned the Human Rights Council. What would you do as Secretary General, if elected, to, in some fashion, remedy the obsession of the Human Rights Council with the State of Israel, which has been the object of about 80%, I think, of their resolutions? And in the long run, more importantly, what would you do to get them to get involved with or pass resolutions on many of the other human rights, genuine human rights violators all over the world?
Let's be fair, in terms of the Human Rights Council, every country is scrutinized. I mean, Montenegro, when they received, tens, dozens of recommendations, and we are trying through our national human rights institutions to make use of it, to implement them in our system, to make sure that we little by little reach all the standards in that field. So in our view, Human Rights Council has proven to be a useful tool, and even I propose that we should hold debate and keep discussion alive about making it a principal body of the United Nations. Of course, I know how hard it is, I know how complex the procedure is and how lengthy it can be, but whatever, I think we need to keep this topic alive, because looking from the perspective of SDGs and Agenda 2030, human rights permeate the whole agenda. So that's why they are not, by coincidence, one of the pillars of our work. In case of Israel, I think, and the best way forward is the international community's committed and renewed efforts to come to a sustainable solution that will make both parties comfortable, and that's the only way to make it sustainable in the long run. That's what I believe. Also, the future Secretary General can help with, because if we implement modifications I've proposed, then probably Secretary General and his deputy could actually do more and allocate more resources in trying to help to and facilitate in order to resolve some of the too longer protracted conflicts.
Yes. Thank you, Majid Ghali, Rudao Media Network. I want to ask you about your approach of solving the refugee crisis in the Middle East, especially because of the war in Syria and what's going on in Iraq in terms of war of ISIS. What would you do differently in dealing with this issue? Especially, we have millions of refugees scattered in the neighboring countries, Lebanon, Jordan, Kurdish region of Iraq, and a very bad economic and burden on this government. What would you do differently regarding this imminent crisis that's going on right now?
I understand the burden of the countries in the region. I'm referring to Middle East, neighboring countries to Syria, and plus there's millions of internally displaced people. Throughout the 90s, although we didn't wage any wars, but Montenegro was sanctuary. Tens of thousands of people came to Montenegro, which is a lot because at some point in time, 20% of our population, we're a small country, 20% of our population were internally displaced people. So I fully understand the burden countries like Jordan or Lebanon face, and they need to be supported. It's difficult now. It's not easy, given the state of affairs, to just come out with a panacea. It's simply impossible. The point is that we need to learn lessons from the situations and these sort of examples, and that is why we need to put more emphasis on mediation and prevention and early warning. We speak about it a lot. In the past 3 decades, we have spoken a lot about prevention and early warning, but not much has happened in the meantime. That's why we need to. That's why my vision is about extending partnerships and better coordination, because UN cannot do on its own everything in this world. That's why we need to work together with League of Arab States, for example. We need to approach some other regional organizations in other cases, and so on, to build adequate momentum. And additionally, of course, more efforts should be invested in resolving politically this matter, because I've also spoken about putting primacy on political solutions, which is always easier to say than to do, but that's the only way forward.
Should we take one last question?
One last question.
One thing I noticed about your presentation, sir, is that you're not a woman. Can you talk a little bit about the dynamics of Eastern Europe women, and what do you want to see as a Secretary General, especially since there's such a strong urge to elect a woman, and you are not? Were you born a man?
Which I understand, of course, but I don't think that, if there was an agreement that, women should be selected, then I wouldn't be standing here, and that's it. But I don't think that the problem of gender equality is going to be resolved by simply appointing a woman Secretary General. I think it's a lot more than that. I think it is about really committed efforts to make sure that 3025 resolution is really implemented. And I can share some of my experience. I mentioned that at the event. When I was Prime Minister, I was the first in the region to appoint female defense minister. And it was controversial, but followed by some other countries in the region. So leading by example, that's what I want to say. I think it also means that if I am to be selected Secretary General, then I should appoint women Deputy Secretary General. And also, not only this equality principle should be applied to, but another one, which means that if I come from Northern Hemisphere, a woman from Southern Hemisphere should be appointed Deputy Secretary General. I even have, in order to strengthen my approach to regional also equality, stressed the need to think about Nairobi as a seat of Deputy Secretary General.
How much money is Montenegro devoted to your campaign? How is your campaign financed?
Well, when government decided to nominate me, there was also a decision that our budget will provide financial means for this. But of course, you know, being myself, having been myself finance minister, I know that you need to make the best possible value out of money invested, which means that we have concentrated our efforts into New York and also a couple of other events to make it as effective as possible, but at the same time as efficient and without committing too much of resources, unless those which are inevitable.
Are you going to disclose the budget?
Of course, okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. No, I couldn't be advocate of transparency, and I was as Prime Minister. I was one of the advocates of transparency without committing to disclose all the money we've spent on trips abroad, all the events I've attended in conducting this campaign. Thank you all. Thank you, folks. Thanks so much. Okay, dakle, zaista mi je bila velika privilegija i čast da danas učestvujem na neformalnom dijalogu kao prvi od kandidata koji su imali prilike da prezentiraju svoju viziju i da odgovaraju na brojna pitanja koja se ticala agende Ujedinjenih nacija, kako one koje se tiču održivog razvoja, tako i ljudskih prava i naravno mira i bezbjednosti, imajući u vidu da su to centralna pitanja onoga čime se bavimo ili čime ćemo se u budućnosti baviti, u potrebi također da ojačamo sistem Ujedinjenih nacija ili ga prilagodimo tom novom vremenu, u smislu da ta vizija podrazumijeva širenje partnerstava, jačanje partnerstava, ne samo sa unutar javnog sektora, već i sa civilnim sektorom i sa privatnim sektorom, kako bi se mobilisali resursi i znanja da implementiramo ono što je naša agenda. Znači, nije u pitanju izmišljanje nove agende, mislim da je 2015. fenomenalan posao urađen, već je sada na sceni kako se najbolje organizovati i implementirati. Dobro, poznajem Vuka Jeremića, ako se odluči da, ako bude odlučeno da bude kandidat, vjerujem da će on doprinijeti ovom procesu. Hvala.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you so much.